Meeting to order. This is a staff meeting of the Hamilton County Commission, July 30th, 2019. Welcome, everyone. We've got a bunch of stuff on our agenda. Before we get started, I do want to recognize that there are two people in the audience that I didn't recognize. They happen to be interns from Sherrod Brown's office. I know, isn't that interesting? I'm like, oh, well, welcome to our meeting. So Tess Hogan and Kylis, is it Menon? Menon. So welcome. I hope it's worth the time that you're spending here with us this afternoon. Thanks for being here. Carry good messages back to the senator. So we're going to move right into the agenda. Item number 1 is a presentation from HCDC related to the Tax Incentive Review Council recommendations et al. Am I right, Harry? We've got a couple of things that are going to be in front of us, and I want to recognize that Catherine Fitzgerald is also with us from HCDC.
Thank you. And also Catherine Brunn, another Catherine
very
that we
good.
have.
Welcome.
Thank you, Commissioners. I'm Harry Blanton with HCDC, and before you today we have 2 items. The first is the Tax Incentive Review Council recommendations. So every year, per Ohio Revised Code, we get together with a group called the Tax Incentive Review Council. Those members are appointed by the county commissioners, the county auditor, the local committee, and the school district. And those councils each look at their community's tax incentives that have been approved by the commissioners. And we review every single one of them to make sure that the companies are performing as agreed in the agreements. Today we also have with us Greg Jarvis, who is the chairman of the Tax Incentive Review Council from the county auditor's office. So Greg can add any comments that he would like to add as well. But I'm going to turn it over to Catherine Brunn, who is overseeing our tax incentive programs, to give an overview of the results.
Yes.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you. So again, Catherine Brunn with the Economic Development Specialist with HCDC. So if you look at the first page of the packet that we put in front of you today, you can see a couple of items related to both our enterprise zone and CRA. On the left-hand side of these charts, you can see the projected goals of these programs based on the agreements that we've signed with the companies. And then right next to that, you can actually see the achieved results based on the information we received from the companies as of the end of calendar year 2018. So overall, doing a great job. Most of our agreements are above and beyond performing the goals of their agreement. As you can look through the column, we've achieved over 100% in each category related to the enterprise zone and CRAs in real property, personal property, and employment. I do want to quickly call out 2 agreements where we made amendments to those agreements. The first was Vantiv. As many of you know, they've officially changed their business name to WorldPay, so we're just reflecting that in their agreement. And the second agreement is Hoarder Investment Management, which is in Sims Township. As of last year, they were not meeting the goals of their agreement, and so the Tax Incentive Review Council, largely supported by the community and the school district, have agreed to maintain their abatement, but to amend those retained job goals as well as their job creation goals. We have also done a review of the revenue sharing per these agreements, and everyone is currently up to par on their revenue sharing. We have a couple of late payments this year. However, we've been in active communication with both the communities and the school districts to make sure those are on their way. And I would be happy to entertain any questions you might have.
So I just have a quick question then about the Hoarder Investment Management change.
Sure.
What is the change?
Yep. So let me get to that one really quickly.
Is it in our packet?
It is.
Okay.
Unfortunately, I forgot to put page numbers in here.
And I forgot to thank the members of the Tax Incentive Review Committee. There are a number of volunteers that serve on this panel, and we're grateful for their service.
You can just take mine and I'll
So
find it in yours.
they should be in alphabetical order once you get to the actual status recommendations. And so for Hoarder Investment Management, the recommendation has been to reduce the retained jobs goal to 27 full-time positions and the retained payroll to 1.7 million. And we also recommended reducing their new job goal to 2 full-time positions and estimated new payroll to 90,000. A lot of this is due to they are currently restructuring their business to remain more competitive in their financial services field. And so a lot of the support from the school district and the community was due to the fact that they've over and achieved their real property investment goals at their site, as well as they expect to quickly rebound after they've restructured in that process.
Okay. So is the idea that had they done the restructuring prior to coming for the incentive that these numbers would have been the most appropriate numbers for that? Is that the idea they've restructured kind of midstream here?
Correct.
Yeah, I would just add, we actually recommended as staff that they might reduce the term, but the community and the school district, after hearing from the company was there, right? Or,
Yep.
that they wanted to work with the company to try to give them a chance to get up to their goal, but they didn't think they could realistically meet the job. So they felt like the real property taxes were being paid, that the county and the school district and everyone was getting the property taxes they would have gotten. And because it's in a township, there's no income tax. And so they just felt like it was something they wanted to do was work with the company. So that was really the recommendation of the Tax Center Review Council. Our recommendation originally was to reduce the term of the incentive in response to the shortfall on jobs. But the community and the Tax Center Review Council and the school district all thought that they would take the plea of the company to stay with the incentive, but reduce the job number.
So when a company doesn't meet their goal, as stated in the very beginning, I don't remember seeing that. Is this typical, or what happens when somebody doesn't meet their goal?
Usually what we do is we look at the performance of the company, recalculate what they would have gotten with the new number. So if they, for say, said that they were going to create 100 jobs and they only created 50, we'll take the new number and pass it through our guidelines and determine what they would have gotten if they would have actually performed at 50 only. And then we recommend a reduction to what the term is. So there's sort of a in-kind reduction in what was originally proposed, consistent with the performance of the company. So if they perform lower in terms of job numbers, we recommend a lower term. But we make that recommendation as staff, but the Tax Center Review Council can ignore or agree with that and then make a recommendation to you. So all of these are recommendations to you from the TIRC.
Is it a clawback, or is it just an ongoing reduction?
So what we normally would do is, like, so if we gave them a 10-year abatement, we would recommend reducing it to 6 years or 8 years. So it would expire quicker and the tax roll would come back on quicker.
Okay. Are there other questions?
Well, Madam President, on the same line that you were bringing up, so initially, they did agree to this goal, though, correct?
Yes.
So is there some thought that we will increase this as the transition or the structural changes are made? Or are you going to maintain this level for the goals?
We do not plan to increase it. We just, the TRC recommendation was just to continue the current abatement, but reduce their job commitment.
That's interesting. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. I think she asked most of the questions I had. Yeah.
Ben,
Report, Tim?
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for the report. I think all three of us are struggling with this one.
Sure.
And first of all, when they entered into the agreement in 2013, do you know what their numbers were at that time? How many jobs did they have? Currently, they have 37 jobs, as I understand it. Do you know how many jobs they had in 2013?
It should be in here. Sorry, Commissioner Perdue. Let me get my glasses
All
on.
right. Yeah, take your time.
In the first paragraph, it's the heading is agreement. It says this was back in 2013. They had 35 jobs and they proposed to create 30.
They had
30.
They had 35
Yeah.
when they entered into the agreement,
Correct.
and they proposed to create 30.
That's correct.
Okay, so in the 5 years since then, they have, retained those 35 and created 2.
Correct.
What were their numbers last year, Harry, do you know? Did they,
I'm sorry, Commissioner Perdue, what was the question?
I'm sorry, last year, their numbers, did they go up or down? Do you know?
Yes, I believe they were in full compliance last year. To Commissioner Dreehouse's question, I believe the restructuring happened largely the last 2 quarters of 2018 into early 2019. So that's when they saw some of that job loss was over those last couple of quarters, and it happened relatively quickly in that period. But they were in compliance last year, and there was a recommendation to continue.
So how many jobs did they have at the start of last year? Were they going up? Did they have more jobs than 35 last year or the year before?
I believe they had more,
Yeah.
and I'd be happy to find that exact number for you from our records from last year.
I'm trying to get a sense of what the curve was. before they restructured and then lost jobs through the restructuring.
Right.
And then in terms of the 30 jobs created, any idea what the payroll goal was with that? I don't see the payroll goal in the summary paragraphs here at all related to the jobs created. Now, you have, in the recommendation, said that recommend reducing the new jobs goal to 2 full-time positions down from 30, and an estimated new payroll goal to $90,000. Do you know what the payroll goal was as it related to the 30 positions?
If I do some quick math, which I'll try and do, their average wage per position is about 45 to 50,000.
Okay,
So I'd
so
say
just the
45,000
number,
times
yeah.
about 30 employees would have
So a
been roughly there.
significant reduction in payroll goal.
Yes.
And they're getting a 10-year abatement on property taxes, real property taxes, and just real property taxes? Or was it a 50% exemption? I see. And you're recommending continuing that?
And
So,
if I could just make
what's
clear
the-
that is the
so
TRC's recommendation.
What's the net gain loss for us, for taxpayers?
For the county,
Over
there
the
would be nothing
balance of
lost.
this agreement.
For the county, there would be nothing lost, other than the taxes abated, but
Right,
they made their investments in real property, so they're performing in that regard.
yeah.
But as far as, there's no payroll tax because they're in a township. So that's why we feel like the school and the township feel like that doesn't impact them if they didn't create the jobs that they agreed to, because they wouldn't get any payroll tax or income tax. So, our staff recommendation was to
So
reduce
there's
the
no
term.
payroll tax at all here for
It's in
any
a
of the local
township-
jurisdictions?
It's in a township, so they don't collect income tax.
Yeah, but it does affect the buying power and sales taxes from that buying power.
Totally
and
agree
all
with that. I agree with that,
would-
Commissioner.
And I don't know what the extrapolation of that is. It just seems to me that this is a substantial alteration as it relates to the jobs retained as well as created. I mean, there are 37 jobs today, and we're allowing them over the balance of the agreement, which is another 5 years, is that right, what we're looking at here? Or is this extended for another 10 through the restructuring?
I believe they are currently 2 or 3 years into their abatement, so they wouldn't get an additional 10 years on top of that. They would just fulfill the remaining 8 to 7 years of
7 or
their.
8, got it. All right. So we're allowing them to still get that abatement for the next 7 years, while in the restructuring, we're allowing them to reduce their total employment by 10 more jobs. And as far as creating any jobs, they did create some new jobs, but we're saying that the total that they're required to create is only 2 full-time positions. And would that be satisfied by the 2 that they added since the start of this to today? So the agreement started at 35, they now have 37. Do those 2 jobs to the good represent, as we sit here today, fulfillment of their obligation for job creation?
Yes, if you accept this recommendation, that would be true.
Okay. Man. This is a tough one to swallow. It really
Yeah, we've
is.
got some
And
trepidation here.
Yeah.
So this is the recommendation from the TIRC.
Correct.
How does staff weigh in to the recommendation, and can you just help us better understand your
Sure.
recommendation related
So
to this?
whenever we have a situation like this, as I was pointing out, we recalculate what we would have offered based on this new reality. And so we often will see a reduction in the term. So like if they were given 10 years, we would reduce it maybe to 6 or 8 years. And then we make that recommendation to the Tax Center Review Council, and then they deliberate with input from the company, from the school district, from the local community, and then they make their decision to recommend to you what they want to do. And so in this case, they took the information from the company, decided since the school district and the township were not losing anything in terms of the taxes that they would have gotten, they were okay with working with the company with their new, I guess, reality that they're going to have fewer jobs. And you have the right to either
But as far
accept
as
that
a
recommendation or not.
A staff recommendation. Is there a staff recommendation to accompany the TIRC?
Well, our recommendation was originally to reduce it, I think, to 8 years
There's
rather
a
than
staff
10.
recommendation to the TIRC.
I'm
which
sorry.
then makes a
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then we make our recommendation to
I
the
see.
TRC. They make the recommendation to the commissioners.
Madam President,
Yes.
what's their business? What do they do? What do they produce?
They're an investment company, like financial investment.
Yeah, so they serve as a financial investment firm in Sims Township. And maybe two other important issues to point out here when we talked to the company. As we were talking with the school board and they were making their kind of testimony toward supporting this abatement, the property that this is currently on was actually previously a church or some religious use, so it was not taxed prior to Horder taking the property. So they actually brought it back into taxable use and then again received the abatement for 50%. So that was an important factor for the school district. And then while the agreement would state 2 full-time positions, the company expects to actually really ramp up their hiring in 2020 at the beginning of next year. But if we did something like 50 jobs that they might create over next year, they would still be in compliance at the end of this year if they don't start the hiring until next year. So there were some timing factors in consideration with that. So even though TIRC has recommended the reduction to 2 full-time positions, the company actually expects to hire significantly more than that beginning in early 2020.
Yeah, I'm not sure why we wouldn't, 30 to 2, why not make it 30 to 20 or 30 to 50? That's just it's no obligation at all to create new jobs because they've already fulfilled that obligation with the 2 new jobs since 2013 and where they stand today. I can't, Madam President, just on balance here, I feel like we're giving up an awful lot and we're getting no real commitment moving forward. I acknowledge the investments in personal property and real property improvements have exceeded the original goal, and that's laudable and that's commendable. I know that weighed in their favor in connection with this. But that was a part of their restructuring in I would imagine. I don't have the whole breakdown on when those investments were made, but my guess is, and correct me if I'm wrong, that was all a part of their restructuring. That this larger plan was included making new investments and so on.
So, yeah, Catherine just pointed out that they went through the investments and they did that before the restructuring, but the restructuring is more, I don't know if it's based on automation or what happened exactly, but I have to apologize. I had to leave the meeting when this was discussed, so my knowledge of it is not as good as usual.
Does Greg,
Yeah.
I don't want to leave Greg out. Would you like to comment at all?
No, just to reiterate what.
Would you mind coming up, please? Yeah, you
About,
have to get on the mic.
the council felt that the property investment, we actually did discuss a number possibly between the 2 and the 30.
Yeah.
I think that did come up. We decided not to do that because they had met their property investment, and also the strong testimony by the local government and the school board. Those all played a factor into it. But we did, that was a possibility
Right.
of going, narrowing the range.
Did you talk about?
We did not do that.
Did you talk about the time frame
Yeah, we did, yes.
and landed on what was already in place?
Right.
Yeah, and I do want to point out, and I recognize that the investment on personal property and the investment in real property has been exceeded. It's the jobs that
Right.
Yeah.
is the sticking point here.
Right.
And whether or not there should be a consequence for that, or, because the 2, as Commissioner Porter, they've already met that goal, so it's not much of a stretch to say that. All right, thank you for that. So what is the pleasure of the board here? We can, obviously deviate from this recommendation. We could hold it for a couple weeks and think about it and see if we want to do something other than what's been recommended. And I'm open to either one, or move forward, open to any of those suggestions.
Madam President, at this time, I'm not in agreement with the recommendation from the TIR, but looking currently at either reducing the amount of time in the agreement or increasing the number of employees expected that they should hire.
Commissioner Fortune?
Madam President, thank you. I think that, the balance of the report and recommendations, I'm in favor of moving on today. This one, my inclination is to want to send it back or see if there can't be some further restructuring that's more favorable from the agreement standpoint. I appreciate the strong testimony from the company about their expected number of jobs to be created starting in 2020. All the more reason to say, well, then, have faith in yourself, have faith in your company. We'll work with you on this, but to say that you have no obligation to create any new jobs, no obligation, that's the hard part for me. And I think that there has to be something there. The years, I'm willing to accept the recommendation from the Tax Incentive Review Council on that, but we're all about creating jobs in the county. And I think to accept that the company has no commitment with us to create any more new jobs over the balance of this agreement is too much to swallow.
Okay. So I would recommend that maybe we hold this and then we go back with the TRC members and the company and try to renegotiate a different goal. And then we come back and we'll be in consultation with the administration to make
Harry,
sure that you're okay with that.
This, as a formal matter, this item's on the agenda for Thursday, is it not?
Right,
So
yes.
I don't know, so the board was not going to vote today.
Okay.
So I don't know whether there's any conversation that can happen between now and Thursday on this. But if not, from a process perspective, the board could hold that particular item and work on that as a
Right.
separate item.
And we could, the commissioners and the county administration with us, we can come up with our own recommendation and approve that on Thursday. We don't have to go back to TRC. We can go back to them, or we can just move forward with what the county wants to do. Because the TRC is just an advisory board that recommends things.
So, and as I page through this, I think we do need to pay some attention to the other agreements. And when I look at job numbers, they are, they're not all over the map, but there is some variation here. So I want to be fair about what we're doing here. So I hear everyone saying then, why don't we separate this one piece out of the recommendation from the TIRC, anticipating moving forward with the rest of the recommendation, and then and then get a recommendation from staff, from HCDC as related to jobs and what number you think is fair. And as I page through this, I'm not really sure what that number is. I'm not sure it is 15. I think it might be lower, looking at some of the relative information from other companies. So let's take a careful look at that. And if staff can make a recommendation by Thursday, come together and think of what a fair number might look like, I think we're open to that, and we could move forward on that. And otherwise, we can take a couple weeks and sort through it. But I think that's the direction I'm hearing from both Jeff and my colleagues.
Madam President?
Sounds good.
Yep.
Yeah, and I don't want to send the wrong signal to the Tax Incentive Review Council. And Greg, if you could carry this back to the members also. They give of their time, they're uncompensated, they work very hard at this, they're committed to their work. I don't want them to feel like we're cutting them off at the knees or something like that, at all. But and I'm very, very, very grateful for their work. This is one of the best programs like this in the nation, frankly. And the fact that we have these agreements and that we're willing to make changes to, even ultimately to claw back on taxes if need be in those circumstances, that quite honestly is unusual. in the industry and unusual in the sense to the good for us for being good stewards of the taxes that everybody pays in the county, and to make sure that it's done in a fair and legitimate manner. So, very grateful to the council for their work. But I think that, and I agree with President Driehaus, that I'm not sure what the number is. I threw out 15 just as a, just as a, for example. And I don't have any specific number in mind. But I do feel that to have no commitment to any new jobs created moving forward for the balance of the agreement is, from where we are today, is asking too much. And I leave it to your good judgment to figure out what that, you think that number should be, and to recommend to us what that is. Thank you.
Thank you,
Madam President, just one comment, Harry. If I could better understand, those 2 jobs were in 2013. From what I'm reading, it's been almost 7 years. So what efforts have been made? I mean, I'd like to know what efforts have been made to try to get more people in.
I think, I'm sorry, as I pointed out, I was not there when this was discussed, but I think Catherine said that they did create the jobs originally, and then last year they went through a restructuring.
I heard that.
Yeah, so they did create the jobs originally, and then they reduced their numbers. So the 2 jobs, I guess, are all that are left of what they did create.
So the total number that they did create was what?
I can step in here. So this one also looks a little strange. So we have both retained jobs and job creation. So we always have to first account jobs to that retained goal. So I think what happened here too is they probably lost some people that they originally moved to the site, and they created jobs, but we first count to that retained goal. So they created more than 2, but the balance shows the 35 and 2. So overall, again, I'd have to look at my numbers. I think in looking back at the records, they had actually moved about 23 people to the site. So that means 37 minus 23 would be the balance of the new jobs. But again, we counted them first toward the retained and then as the new job growth.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And I do want to say, look, these numbers are fantastic.
I was saying, if you look at the overall
let's not lose
program-
sight of, like you said, I mean, these numbers are fantastic. In
Yeah,
fact,
they
it
are.
makes me think the goals are maybe too low, because we're way over 100% achieved in every category.
Right.
The one is 1,300% over
That's
in that
extraordinary.
category. Yeah, so,
That's one agreement, and you know what it is? It's a company that invests like $50 million in software, so it just really shot that number up.
don't ruin it for me here.
Sorry.
No, I'm just kidding. No, I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. But I do think there is a great story to be told here, that we're doing something right, and the community is benefiting from that, as are we. So I don't want to lose sight of that. It's just this one little tiny piece
Sure.
that we want a little more information on. So I appreciate your indulgence with that, and we'll move forward with the rest of it, or the balance. And if you come forward, and please feel free to reach out to all 3 of us with a new recommendation from you guys, and then maybe we can move forward on Thursday, but we'll play it by ear.
We
Okay?
appreciate your direction,
All right.
Commissioners, and we will get
Thank
back
you.
to you on this. Thank you.
Thank you.
And then we just have our quarterly report really quickly. Pat Longo and Catherine Fitzgerald are going to come up and give that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Yeah.
So far in 2019, it's been a pretty good year for HCDC. As we continue to strategize and form our next 3-year plan, we've been working with great Hamilton County companies, entrepreneurs, and communities. But I wanted to point out, as you said in the last report with Harry and Catherine, a lot of good things have been going on, and a lot of good things have been going on for HCDC. We've actually won the following awards, so this is pretty cool. Our collaborative spirit was awarded with the Cincinnati Association Government Cooperation Award. Our lending team that focuses on SBA 504 and State of Ohio 166 was highlighted for its record volume year in 2018 with the top CDC of the Year award for the Columbus SBA District. Probably the award we're most excited about was given to us from the Association of Corporate Growth, ACG. We were named one of their deal makers. There were 30 nominees, and we were one of 5. And we want to say that's for our deal-making prowess as an organization across lending, economic development, and incubation. And then finally, we were recognized nationally by the National Association of Development Companies, NADCO, with the Diamond Award for Creative Partnership and Financing. The award was given for our partnership with the Cincinnati Development Fund and the National Trust for Historic Preservation for the redevelopment of the Woodward Theater down in OTR. So those were some really great awards. Now here are some quarterly numbers for you, and something I wanted to highlight. Our lending numbers since June 1st have kind of gone off the charts. We've had 8 approvals. Just to put in context, that's in 1 month. Last year we did 38 altogether. Those were $7.5 million worth of projects, and these are companies like Conover Family Dental in Springfield Township, Sammy's Craft Burgers in Blue Ash, and Hilltop Glass on Hamilton Avenue. So a nice diverse set of owners and areas within Hamilton County. Our business incubation program continues to hover near record occupancy levels with over 60 innovative companies being served. And we're moving out, we're going to decrease our occupancy because we're going to have a successful graduate here shortly, a company called Velotech, which makes a nanotech product that they can put on the inside of wings to keep drones and airplanes warm during winter months. And they are graduating to Woodlawn. Just a little bit of success. At this point in time last year, they had 6 employees. Currently, they have 24. And Woodlawn, right near Evendale's Aero Hub project. So it's very nice, a great success story. Also wanted to announce we have a couple new hires, but I'm going to talk about one. We have a new business center director, a person that replaced me in running the incubator. Teresa Sedlak joined us in April. She comes to us after serving as a business coach and program manager at the University of Notre Dame's Business Incubation Program in South Bend, Indiana. So just wanted to get you up to date on some of our lending and incubation, and now I'm going to let Catherine talk about our economic development side.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. Just to give you a very quick highlight, we have a project highlight on Lockland. That's been a very long project in the running, about 10 years, for the redevelopment of the Stearns and Foster site. We've gone through environmental remediation. We've gone through a site development plan with a proposed plan for the site. Obviously, the goal for the community is maximizing earnings tax and property tax for the county. We've assisted with the funding to actually acquire the east side of the property through the Community and Economic Development Assistance Program, the Cdbg Economic Development Fund through Hamilton County. That was just recently acquired. So the village does own the entire site now. And finally, the village has been working on an RFP for a master developer for the site. So that's been going very well, long in the running, and the community is very excited about the prospects of tax for the village. Any questions on that specifically?
Catherine, if I could just remind the board, I know you're aware, but that Stearns and Foster site is one that the county has a long history for as well. The county applied for with the Port Authority and with the assistance of HCDC, who was working with with Lockland at the time to obtain a Clean Ohio grant to demolish and remediate that particular site. So that was kind of the initial action that spurred a lot of this progress. So the board's got some history there that we're now seeing come to fruition.
Do you remember how much we got from Clean Ohio?
Catherine, do you recall? We got a couple of those grants. I can't remember what this one was precise. I can find that out and shoot it back to the board.
Yeah.
I can find out as well. Dan would know. I don't want to give an incorrect figure on that. So,
In other words, it's a partnership.
absolutely,
Okay.
absolutely.
Great.
So, and then finally, just want to announce that we do have a new Office of Innovation and Creativity Director. Paul Fisher just started Monday. He's got both Fortune 500 experience and also startup experience. So he's very high energy. We were sorry to lose Carla Boldry, but very excited to have Paul on staff.
Mm-hmm. Great. Thank you. Any
Thank you.
questions or comments?
No comments.
Great job.
All right,
Congratulations.
Thank you all for coming in. All right. The next item is a presentation on 2019 CDBG Planning Mini Grant Awardees. James Noyes, Steve Johns, Joy Pearson, I think are all in the room? Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
As soon as you hit the button, that'll come on.
Okay, all right, great.
And I should, I'll tee this up a little bit while we're waiting. These grants are going out to the communities, out in the outlying jurisdictions, and have been used for catalytic purposes to create economic activity in many, many of these neighborhoods. So I just want to say that this is one of my personal favorites because it's the county's way of partnering in economic development and job creation. So thank you all for being here, and we're looking forward to the report.
Madam President, thank you very much, and kind of stealing my thunder there. So, but you did an excellent job of doing that. So, no, not whatsoever.
We're all
So,
economic development today. It's
exactly.
great.
I thought it fit very well in for the theme today. So, and HCDC kicked it off very well. I'm just going to say a few words, and then I'm going to turn it over to Steve Johns, who heads our Community Planning Division. Also, Joy Pearson is here. Money for this is provided by the Cdbg money from HUD. From that standpoint, working together, the Community Development and Community Planning Divisions, working with or through the board, Steve will go into more or less who they were working on the recommendations. But essentially, as you said, it's catalytic in the fact that, a little bit of money is able to provide, for a long-term growth within the county. So Steve's going to go back through and show you this is the fourth year of this project, and this is $100,000, but really being able to leverage that money, and he'll provide some success stories from the 4 years from that standpoint. So beyond this year, but also providing information on the past years as well. So I'll turn it over to Steve so he can be as efficient as possible for you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. Thanks so much for offering us this time to talk about this really cool program. The three things that I'd like to try to convey today are to talk a little bit about where this program came from, talk about our current year of funding, the 2019 grant period, and a little bit of the history of what we've seen. I love this program too because it really does highlight some of the great things going on in the 49 jurisdictions outside of the central core area. And it has a lot to do with what we're seeing as successful in the central core area. All those little towns out there that we know about, Sharonville, Glendale, Cheviot, out there have those centers that more and more millennials and folks want to come to and invest in. So I think this is really setting up for what's going to spill out of the city of Cincinnati in the future. There we go. So just a little bit of history on this. We started the program back in 2015, and it was in large part thanks to Joy Pearson and her restructuring of the whole Cdbg program, where we had been giving money out to the kind of the same old folks and for some very not real exciting projects like road paving, necessary, but not very exciting. And we came up with an idea that what if we planned before we gave away the money, before we assigned the money, the Cdbg program. And so that was, it's $100,000, so it's a relatively modest amount, but it really has gone a long way to spurring new and innovative ideas to use the Cdbg program. So obviously this is happening outside the city of Cincinnati. We get our own Cdbg funds to the county, and we raised the award back after the second year of the program from $20,000 to up to $40,000 per community. So where do these funds go to? A lot of times communities do long-range comprehensive plans, and these can be fairly expensive endeavors, but often coming out of those plans are specific site plans for their business district or for a hike and bike trail or a targeted economic development area. So many of the programs we've been looking at take comprehensive planning and take it to the next step to really focus in on a smaller piece of a master plan. So it is, these are soft costs, so we don't actually do capital items through this, but again, set the stage for future capital investment. What happened in 2019? Well, we announced the program back in March. We had a question and answer meeting in April. Pre-applications were due at the 24th of April, and then full applications in June. Staff does the completeness review for this, and then we turn it over to other folks to actually review and recommend the ones that we are going to fund. So in 2019, we sent that to an advisory committee, which include folks from the CDAC, Community Development Advisory Committee, and also members from our planning partnership. Another group you don't hear that much about probably, but a way for communities to participate in our regional planning commission. Communities can pay dues, annual dues, to be members of the planning partnership and help fund planning throughout the county. We also then take those recommendations to the regional planning commission for their review. That happened just a month ago. And then the county administrator, Jeff, in this case, actually has the authority to approve those through the action plan that you approved back in May. What we look at to score those projects include jurisdictions that haven't received a grant. Obviously, there's 40 jurisdictions that participate in our Cdbg program, so we try to spread the wealth, so to speak. Jurisdictions with limited planning capacity, you're well aware that some of our smaller places barely have a city manager sometimes, let alone a planning person. Projects and plans that leverage other funds, so we look for people to either bring local funds or state funds or other funds to help pay for these projects. Ones that complement current or planned initiatives like a comprehensive plan. Collaboration, HCDC has collaborated with a lot of folks on these projects, and often community development corporations or community investment corporations are also partners. We want to actually do something, so ones that get implemented we look for that have a high ability to get implemented, utilize grant resources. If you belong to the county planning partnership, you get a bonus point or two, and plans that include future projects. And of course, timeliness is something we look at. For 2019, we're recommending funding for jurisdictions and then sending some staff time to one jurisdiction. The City of Cheviot wants to do a neighborhood business district plan, so we're looking at awarding them $20,000 for that. Madeira has done a lot of studies in their downtown. They want to make it more pedestrian friendly, slow down the traffic through there a little bit on Miami Avenue, have some ideas for traffic calming and even perhaps a road diet where they take some lanes away. So they need some help to make that happen. Sharonville, as I mentioned, they completed a comprehensive plan and want to do something with their downtown right there at Reading and Sharon Road. So they have a streetscape and design plan that they want to put a sharper pencil to. And then Silverton, one of our stars of this program, they're looking to take the success that they've had down at the High Grain Brewing Facility in their old municipal building and now spread that down toward Myers on Plainfield Road. So we're looking to fund that. Lockland, as was mentioned by HCDC, lots of good things going on there. Now they want to take that success of the potential redevelopment of the Stearns and Foster and go across to that little village that's already there, that little downtown that they have at the Mill and Dunn area to reestablish that and look at what they can do with existing landowners. So that's the one where we're going to use a little staff time on. I kind of touched on all these projects. The Cheviot one will be cooperating with ULI, Urban Land Institute. They have something called a technical assistance panel where they bring in private developers to help inform what could be done in that area. Sharonville, I mentioned. Silverton and Madeira, I think I touched on these all pretty well. There's the High Grain Brewery, though. There it is. You can check it out. It's all open and ready to go. Quite a success story. Here's a little review of some of the projects in the past. Mount Healthy had a planning grant near their downtown that is about to spur some good investment. Reading has some flooding issues. Some of their community is actually impacted by the Mill Creek, so they're looking at trying to figure out how to do more flood storage to take away some of that potential flooding problem. Cleves and North Bend, way out on the west side, also have small business districts, and you might know about the William Henry Harrison Monument out there, which is quite something to see. They wanted to capitalize on that nice asset, and so they did a plan and try to activate their riverfront. Loveland has a great bicycle trail up there that is doing well, but they have a parking issue. It's so successful. So they're looking at trying to find a way to link to some existing parking areas. And again, here's Silverton, one of our poster childs for success, where they took a streetscape improvement plan and then took some follow-on Cdbg money and actually implemented that plan right there on Montgomery Road. And Lockland, we just talked some about the Stearns and Foster site and the successes there through some follow-up Cdbg money. 2016 saw Delhi looking at a bike path to connect Mount St. Joe to their business corridor. Woodlawn, we did some strategic planning for them to build on their existing master plan. In 2018, Coleraine used their money to look at a Northgate Mall redevelopment study, which you probably saw in the Business Courier. Shows some really cool renderings of what could be done on that site. Amberley Village has the Amberley Green property. which the village owns, and they're looking at doing some redevelopment there, but also providing pedestrian access into the property. And just recently, Reading completed a master plan update with, in part, help through these monies. Mount Healthy, following in on their study from back in 2015, is now looking at the main theater that they have, looking at redevelopment of that facility. And then Deer Park, they have a big road project about to happen on Blue Ash Road where they're going to put in some green infrastructure, and they hope that sparks some redevelopment through there. A couple just last items. We had been starting to do these staff projects where outside of hard cash from Cdbg, we use some staff time from my division to do some of the planning work. That they're great projects, but we just don't have enough money to go around. Last year that was in North College Hill where we helped them with their master plan update. And also in Springfield Township in West College Hill, where there's some new investment happening in there, but they need some new infrastructure as well. So we looked at infrastructure improvements and new housing as part of that. So it really has been a successful program, and you can see that it's been sprinkled throughout the county. So we're really excited to share this with you, and if you have any insights or ways we can do this better, we'd love to hear about them.
Well, thank you. It's great that you provided the overview of what you have done in the past and how it just continues to build in some communities and how other communities are just getting on board. So it's just a great program. I would just wish there were more money for it.
Yes.
So maybe that's our role, is just to lobby for more money so we can do more of the good work that you're doing. So thank you for doing it. Any comments or questions?
Yes, Madam President. As of 2015, was it also 100,000? Has it increased?
No, the money has not increased. It's all
was
4 funding
100,000.
years that we've done.
It's been 100,000,
and
yeah.
we skipped 1 year
Okay.
since 2015.
And as I look at your scoring criteria, I think that the first one says jurisdiction that have not yet received a mini grant, but I see a lot of duplication of neighborhoods like Silverton and Woodlawn and also Sharonville. So is that highly rated, that first criteria, is that
They're
they are
each
rated?
equally rated.
Equally rated?
Yes, and so there is one further down there in the criteria that shows about past implementation.
Uh-huh.
So some of those folks that have, like Silverton, the example we keep bringing up, that have actually taken the plan and then implemented it, also get additional points there, so that kind of counterbalances that they've already received grants in the past. There are new folks that have been applying, but some of them just aren't quite ready yet. A couple of the ones that applied this round were Newtown, Norwood, and Loveland actually came back around. But Newtown and Norwood were two new ones, but they just didn't seem to be quite ready yet in their planning process. Newtown's about to complete a comprehensive plan, so we'd really like them to finish that before they come for mini grant money. And Norwood, it just seemed like it wasn't a fully fleshed out project. You know, we couldn't really tell what they were asking for us to do.
So having a comprehensive plan is, I didn't go through all the criterias, but that's part of the willingness to give them additional money.
Yes, that really shows intention toward this program.
Absolutely. Okay. Thank you. Thank you for this.
Any other questions or comments?
Comment. It's great that we are doing this, and I concur with the comments from my colleagues about, we wish we had more funding to apply to this. I did not see in the report other dollars that have been leveraged necessarily in connection with these recommended projects, though I'm certain that you have been able to take that into account in the decisions.
Yes.
Not asking the details on that today, but at some point it would be good to know what other dollars have been leveraged that are a part of this, that we have control over. Just quickly, for example, the Silverton Corridor project is perfectly aligned, as is the Loveland, Corridor Bikeway and all those other things, perfectly aligned with the mission of the County Transportation Improvement District and the ability of projects through the TID to be able to access ODOT funds or ODOD funds, all cobbled together. So a little bit of money through this leveraged with a little money there and other money from other sources can lead to a much bigger bang for the dollars spent. And I'm not saying that's not being done here. I just don't have the detail in front of me here to know exactly how that's done, but want to make sure we're always looking for those opportunities to access other supportive agencies within the county or entities outside of the county that could add to what we're able to contribute on
Yes.
this. And then second, with respect to some of the newer applicants who don't quite have everything together, just caution that in some cases, those are the ones that maybe need our help the most. So I don't want the program to become one where the haves continue to have and the have-nots are always on the outside looking in because they're not quite at the same level or the same par of preparedness. They need that help too, and I think through staff work and that sort of support that we can provide, we can help them get to where they need to be, preceding these mini grant awards and timelines for applications and the like, to help get them more ready to be able to compete favorably for the dollars that we're allocating. That's all. Thank you, Madam President.
Yeah, thank you. All right, thank you. Thank you so much for coming in. Appreciate it. Our next item is related to the Hamilton County Fair. Before we start the discussion about the resolution that was sent around to the other offices, I did receive an email from Jay Janis Jr. related to accessibility of the event. Did we all get this? I don't know if we all got this or not. Regardless, I did follow up with staff, Jackie in particular, and asked, or it was Teresa, and asked if we do have a plan for people that attend the fair, drive in, and then the hill that they have to get up is really steep and long. And so there is something in place, and some of us may know this, but I didn't, where if you alert the parking attendant, when you pull in, they will bring a golf cart down so that person can get up the hill and they don't have to get up the hill on their own. So I just wanted to convey that information because it was brought to my attention by a constituent, and I think broadly it's good information to have and to know for people with disabilities. So just wanted to share that with the rest of the commission, and I will respond to the constituent individually. So with that, we're moving into a conversation, and it's just a conversation about the Hamilton County Fair. And we've had this conversation before, and Commissioner Portune, I know you've got a longer history than I do related to the fair, but a couple of years ago when I first came on the commission, I was curious as to how much we were doing with the fair, the property that the fairgrounds operates on, just the nature of the fair itself. I was not that familiar. And so I went out to the fair so I could get some firsthand experience on what happens out there. So I have that under my belt. But in the meantime, I read an article about the Harvest Home Fair and how they are struggling. Thank you. With their operation and struggling to make sure, have people continue to be interested in helping organize that. And also 4-H and the Farm Bureau are involved in, it's a fair-like setting up at Stricker's Grove where they show animals and, they do a lot of the same kinds of things. And it just seemed to me that we've got all these disparate operations going on related to what I think is kind of the intention of the fair, which is to promote agriculture, to expose people to what's happening in agriculture, and urban farming, and anything else that kind of fits into the environmental frame of the Ag Society and a county fair. And so I wanted to take this a step further. It's been on my, as I've told people, it's been on my chalkboard for a while, but wanted to put something more formally in front of my colleagues to kind of get the ball rolling on maybe a task force or a group that can think about where we are at this moment in time on all of the fronts I just mentioned and where we might want to move in the future related to the Hamilton County Fair. Noting that under the ORC, every county in the state of Ohio is obligated to have a fair. I think that shows the importance of these county fairs to what the state of Ohio represents by way of agriculture. And I'm not suggesting that we not do that. What I'm suggesting is we might want to think about doing it differently and in partnership with some of the other organizations in the county that are doing similar things. So I have a resolution basically outlining a little bit of the history of the fair. It's got a very rich heritage here in Hamilton County, recognizing the work that's been done to keep the fair going, talks about what we might look to in the future to think about the nature of an urban fair, which I think is kind of what we have here. And then it sets forth to convene a task force comprised of 11 members appointed by the board, but representing different groups, and I'm going to outline them real quickly. It's representing for Hamilton County 4-H, the Hamilton County Farm Bureau, the Harvest Home Fair, the neighborhood of Carthage, which is where the fair currently sits, Hamilton County Administration, the Ohio Extension Office of Hamilton County, the City of Cincinnati Administration, 2 members representing the interest of the Hamilton County Ag Society, which are the current operators of the fair, and 3 members representing the public at large. So, and then it goes into some more detail about what I would hope that task force would look at by way of engaging the community, providing education, entertainment, and all the things that might be possible at a county fair. So it's a draft document, and I am anxious to hear any comments or additions, deletions to the document so that we can move forward with creating this task force. Commissioner Summerall Dumas.
Thank you, Madam President. I did get a chance to review it slightly. And thank you for this information yesterday. And as I looked at it, the task force sounds like a good number. I was looking at the second line of the task force as far as membership, and it says the neighborhood of Carthage within the city of Cincinnati. And I'm assuming you're saying a resident of Carthage.
A resident representing the Carthage neighborhood.
Yeah, and then the last sentence says 3 members representing the public at large, so they can.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Well, it says 3 and the number says 2.
Yeah.
So, so that's a problem.
Yeah, but
right.
That's okay, yeah. That's just a typo.
Yep,
right?
yep.
Yeah.
I'll fix it.
But anyway, so you can live anywhere actually and have some input in this if you're, but I would like to recommend one person from each office, each of our offices. I know that'll take it up to, 14, you probably want an odd number. And the reason is because we may end up either reducing monies that go to the fair, we may look at combining other fairs, as you were saying, we may have to add more money. So at that point, each office would have to decide as it relates to the budget what we want to do. So just maybe one representative from each office, which would make it a little bigger, or we could take one of the representatives off that you mentioned. But other than that, I think it's a great thing to look at. I think the task force is a great idea because it's something that has really had an impact on our county and our city, and we need to look at it because I have been over there before, and there's some things that, of course, need to be done. It's an old fair and things like that. But I like your idea of possibly combining fairs, too. So that's where I am right now.
All right, great. Thank you. Commissioner Portillo?
Well, it has had a long history. As you know, a similar effort was convened, I can't remember how many years ago it was, 2010, thereabouts?
About 10 years ago.
About 10 years ago.
I think that's right.
And a number of recommendations were made, but none were acted upon or followed through on with the fair. There were other ideas about use of the fairgrounds property that surfaced in the years since then. I know the Metropolitan Sewer District had one proposal about using some of their SEP money to have the fairgrounds property become almost an educational campus around issues of groundwater and water retention and green infrastructure and things of that nature, and to have educational camps run there. There were several efforts that never went very far about the fairgrounds serving as the permanent home for a professional soccer team before FC Cincinnati was ever on the landscape at all, and or uses of the fairgrounds as a large soccer camp recreational area for the hosting of tournaments and things like that that would bring visitors to the area outside of whether any fair activities would take place. A lot of commentary was received, and this is just sort of generally over the years, about moving the fairgrounds to Stricker's Grove or combining it with something like the Harvest Home Fair and the like. But none of those ever had the requisite amount of support to lead to any action in pursuit of those options whatsoever. In 2017, we asked the Agricultural Society to put together, to work on putting together a strategic plan for the future of the fair. There was county representation that attended those meetings of the Agricultural Society, the Fair Board, when they were working on that. The fair then issued surveys during the 2017 Hamilton County Fair as a means to solicit broader public input into what people wanted to see out of the fair, what their complaints were about it, what their ideas for the future about it were, and the like. That became the basis then for the inclusion of, or at least identifying funding that would be able to be made available to the Fair Board and the Agricultural Society, for a real professional study to be done in 2018, dependent upon the Fair Board being in agreement in moving in that direction. In the early part of 2018, they got more focused on just exactly how the 2018 fair would be conducted than really planning on what would occur in the future. So those funds were not spent in 2018 for that purpose. The 2018 fair, its overall attendance reflected sort of the same generally poor numbers that we have seen over the years. If I can put my hands on it.
From 2017, it was 9,000.
Yeah.
Over the course of 5 days.
And I know that 2016 was a particularly bad year where somewhere in the 5,000 range were the number of attendees in 2016. And that was attributable to unusual climate issues that hit the fair. But, you know, one of the chief complaints about the fair at the county location have been the facilities. The facilities are really a drawback to attendance at the fair in terms of their condition, their utilization, and the like. In their defense, the Fair Board has done, and or the Agricultural Society have tried to maximize revenues generated throughout the course of the year from other events, other festivals that take place. The historic average, I think, for the last 4 years of total attendees at events throughout the year has averaged approximately 35,000 attendees at that location, but certainly not at the fair. And I share all that background just to say that the money that we had originally identified for the conduction of a professional study earmarked toward making the fair be attractive to an urban audience, a diverse crowd, taking advantage of issues related to urban agriculture. We have so many food deserts in Hamilton County, and the opportunities to team up with 4-H or the County Farm Bureau or things of that nature, and to demonstrate at the fair how those activities can be translated into serving the broader population, things of that nature, are the kind of possible ideas outside of just the entertainment available from acts to activities and the like that could help to overall make the fair more attractive than it currently is. The other thing I'd want to say is that I know the Fair Board wanted to take a crack in 2018 at introducing their own new set of ideas and so on to make the fair more attractive in Hamilton County. And there are a couple of new things that they did introduce, but nothing near of the kind, nature, or magnitude that would turn things around. And I think all of that sort of brings us to where we are today, which is they are in, or the future of the Hamilton County Fair is truly in need of outside professional assistance if the fair is to continue. And that's in saying that, I sure hope the headlines tomorrow aren't Portune, says fair, future in doubt, or something like that. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that the continuity of the Hamilton County Fair, I don't think that the fair needs to end by any stretch, but it needs to be configured in a significant way, in a major new way, in order for it to be attractive to all of the diverse people that live in Hamilton County and interests that exist in Hamilton County, and it just is not that today as we speak. I think that's all I have to say on the matter, Madam President, all of which frankly leads to the fact that your proposed resolution, which I know we're not acting on today, and whether it goes forward in its current iteration or whether there are any changes to it that are made between now and when we act, the bottom line is that I think that a task force is appropriate. I believe that the allowance for professional assistance is appropriate, and but all of those have to be preconditioned on the fact that the Fair Board and the Agricultural Society are going to be willing to accept the recommendations that come out of that in the decision of the board, because at the end of the day, we don't own the rights to this. We don't own the property, all of which is what makes it very complicated. But for our involvement to be appropriate, conditional to that, I think there has to be a commitment by those that do own the property and control the running of the fair and so forth, a commitment that they will accept what comes of this process, and not that at the end of the day recommendations are made, but there's tremendous resistance to the point of non-acceptance and non-implementation of what is ultimately decided from us with respect to our involvement in assisting and moving this matter forward.
Well, and I don't mean to suggest that this is going to be an easy conversation, because these are entities that have been operating for 4-H, Farm Bureau, Harvest Home, Hamilton County Fair, all have been operating for a long time, and I think all of them are seeing a decline in attendance, and I am hopeful that they will be willing to come together and have a conversation, because really that's what this is about, is having a conversation about how things are done now and how they could be done differently in the future to the benefit of all of the above. And so I'm optimistic about where this could head. If it does not lead to that, then it does not lead to that. I mean, I think we have to be open to that possibility, but I sure would like to give this a chance and bring in the most relevant parties that are already working in fairground spaces and say, hey, do we have ideas that might make all of these better and have everybody participate at the same table at the same time. So that's, and then as you said, give it some of the county administration perspective and work power to make sure that whatever is recommended can be implemented. And so, and as far as the commission offices, I did think about that, and I didn't want to obligate the offices to participate in this, and I also didn't want to have to worry about a quorum. And so I'm obviously open to that, or wonder if we could make sure that the commission officers are aware of the task force meetings when they're happening and welcome attendance if possible, but if not, that's okay too. So let's talk a little bit further about writing that in, or just making sure that the offices are in the loop. But I'm open to any adjustments. As I said, it's a draft. I hope to bring it forward maybe in a couple of weeks. I will be reaching out to all of the interested parties to make sure that this is in the offing, make sure that they're willing to participate. Again, it's a discussion about the future of this kind of thing in Hamilton County, and so I'm hoping that people will want to have that discussion. So, yes. Yeah.
Madam President, as Commissioner Portune was talking, I thought of some questions. So just very quickly, in the administration, you don't have to answer these now, but just wondering what the property value of that area is. And also, the total acreage of that area is huge. And also, I'm assuming the zoning is commercial. I'm assuming that, if you can let me know. And then the other thing is, we don't want to turn, and I'm not saying that we are, but a blind eye to, and you can't believe everything you read in the newspapers, but it did have that the financials of the Hamilton County Fair were inauditable. The auditors looked at it and they weren't able to figure out financially what was going on. So I think that's something else we need to know. And of course, as we look toward the future, that was one reason why I was wondering about the zoning and things like that. So.
Sure, we can provide all of that. We'll get a report back to the board on that.
Okay.
I think size-wise, I think it's 37 acres.
38.
38
acres, okay.
38 acres. I don't know that we have any current appraisal on the property, but certainly we can pull the auditor's book value and include that in there as well. We can get information on the zoning classification as well. So we'll get that all back to the board this week.
In the audit portion.
And at least an opinion back on what we understand about the state audits, auditors' inability to audit the organization.
Thank you, appreciate it. That's all I have, Madam President.
Thank you. So we've got more information to come. It may impact the wording of the resolution, so we will leave it at that. But thank you all for being open to the possibility of putting this task force together to move the fair forward. So thank you for that. And I do think it's, and I, on this topic, the fair opens next week. I believe that's true. Yeah, I think we've been invited out for that, so I just do want to put that on the radar. Handicapped accessible also. All right. The next item on the agenda is a budget adjustment. John Bruder.
I'll just kick it off briefly while John's coming to the podium here, but this is budget adjustment number 20. It's 1.53 million. It appropriates several grants, but also more directly also makes a budget adjustment in Common Pleas to allow them to meet their personnel line item and payroll meet for 2019. So, John, any specific details you want to provide on that?
Not a great deal. It's just that this is unusual in that it's as early in the year as it is. When we made budget reductions pretty heavily last year, and we tended to, without other guidance, make them in the personnel area in this court. So the entire reduction was loaded in personnel, and so are coming in over that, and are coming in over that quite early in the year.
This is one of the adjustments that I believe indicated directly when we were in the budget process for 2019 that there were we could target how different budget reductions were going to turn out, and some that were going to be sustainable and some that we had concerns that were not. This was one of the ones that we targeted as having a concern was not sustainable given the state mandates and the requirements of the court. I can say I spoke with Administrator Dressing on this. He indicated that they are, and I think John Bergen indicated this in his report to the board on the same issue, that the spending is relatively consistent with 2018 levels. This is not a matter of spending escalating above past amounts, and that they would also look for opportunities as we get towards the end of the year and do final reconciliations to look for grant funds to help offset this. But right now they just don't know what the levels of those grants are going to be and can't promise to that, but they are definitely going to look for that opportunity as we get towards the end of the year.
And as usual with this sort of thing, it's consistent with the projections that we've been doing thus far this year. This doesn't change our estimates of general fund reserves as they've been reported so far.
So the overarching concern that I have about this is not so much this particular adjustment, because I think that in and of itself is very concerning. And as you said, we're in July right now. And so what we did in the budget exercise last year was try to live within our means and create reductions across the board, and this was one of them, right? And so I guess my overarching concern here is that, you know, while I understand how we need to do this, I'm wondering how many other departments are going to come forward and say, we too need a budget adjustment because we simply did not have a budgeted amount given the budget reductions we had to implement for this year, and we're going to continue to have these needs. And like you said, it's not like they're spending so much more than they have in the past. It's just the money wasn't allocated through the budget because we didn't have it.
Right.
So I just that's a worry that I have moving forward. And I know we've got the CROW study happening right now, and that is a broad overview of county finances, county budgeting, and I'm anxious to see the results of that. But this is just one piece of, you know, this budget problem that we have at the county, and now we're starting to see it play out. Is that a fair characterization of what's happening here?
Absolutely, and I would say I don't have the report in front of me, but we'll be issuing a second quarter report in a few days, and it's about 8 or 9 departments in the general fund that are in the same situation. It's unusual, as I said, to be this early in the year. Typically, we do these in November.
Yep.
So.
Okay. Thank you. Any questions or comments?
Madam President, and I think I wrote John a note. I understand the adjustment. Are we going to have to do this every month? This will be the only adjustment we have to do for them?
This will be the only adjustment we'll have to do for the Court of Common Pleas. There are other departments that will be on other timelines that will likely have to come forward. We also do have an issue specific to this year related to a 27th payroll. We have one extra payroll this year. We'll resolve that for all departments at the same time, probably in November or December.
So is each department submitting, even monthly, what they're doing differently to try to reach their goal? We know they got less money, but what are they doing? We don't want to wait to the end of the year and say, look at other grants and all. What are they doing? Are they mandated to say we're changing this, or we're not doing as much overtime, or what? So do they have to report monthly to you or the administrator or whatever?
No, they don't.
Well, I mean, have we thought about that? Because if we continue to relieve them, not that they don't need the relief, and then we're not asking them to show us what are you doing differently, you know, I think that's a mistake.
Yeah, well, we certainly are talking with them monthly as we prepare projection reports. But so we have a sense of where departments are making changes and are trying to live within, and we certainly have some of that. There are other departments that are very clear that they have a responsibility under the Ohio Revised Code to provide certain services, and they are going to need to spend at an additional level, and are really pretty clear that they are not making reductions because they need to spend at a certain level in order to meet their mandated services.
Can I ask for clarity, though, to your point? So, but there are budget analysts that are talking to these departments all the time about, what they're doing, are they going to meet the projections? We, in the last year or two, I don't remember how long ago it's been, we were holding quarterly meetings with all the departments. And, it was interesting and it was helpful to a point, because every time we got together, we did hear the same thing, which was, we don't have enough money to provide mandated services, and we need, some relief. And we did hear about some of the cuts and some of the, what was going on internally to these departments. So that was helpful. But there are ongoing conversations with the budget analysts that are tasked with certain parts of the administration that are keeping tabs and keeping constant contact. Is that with the other departments?
Absolutely.
So I don't want you to think that that's not happening.
And for context for the public, is that in this case we are talking about a court, and the courts have a very different level of budgetary authority than the other departments within the county, and the judiciary has the ability to say, we can't do this, and this is the budget we're going to have for this year. And so that's what we're looking at now with the Court of Common Pleas.
Thank you.
Commissioner Fortune, anything?
No questions.
All right, thank you. All right, do we need an action?
Yeah, I think we have this on the agenda today in order to actually address the budget issue in order to make payroll for the next payroll that's cut. So we would recommend action today.
Yes, this is here today because payroll cuts
It has to be,
tomorrow.
right? Okay, all right, so then I will move that we approve of the budget adjustment number 20, $1.53 million for various departments and funds.
Second.
Yes,
Yes.
Yes.
thank you.
Again, another clarifying comment, just for the folks who have heard 1.5 some million. There are a number of items in this resolution, 900 some thousand of it is specifically related to payroll supplemental in the Court of Common Pleas. There is a $370,000 transfer within that department for payroll issues as well, but that has to do with a change in how court reporters are paid. So that's a separate issue from the supplemental.
All right, thank you. We've got that detail in front of us in our packets. Okay, if there's nothing further, I am going to move that we go into executive session pursuant to RC Section 121.22G4 to conduct or review negotiations or bargaining sessions concerning employee compensation or other terms and conditions of their employment, and also move into executive session pursuant to RC Section 121.22G2 to consider the purchase of property for public purposes, the sale of property at competitive bidding, or the sale or other disposition of unneeded, obsolete, or unfit for use property.
Second.
Yes,
Yes.
Yes.
thank you.
Keep me busy with all these announcements and the bands.